Mr. President, I rise today to speak to my amendment number 2959 to the unemployment insurance legislation that's before us. The amendment's called the Good Jobs, Good Wages, Good Hours Act. Mr. President, 12 times Congress has voted to extend emergency unemployment benefits since 2008. And what do we have to show for those 12 extensions of these benefits? More than 10 million Americans remain unemployed. Of those, more than 3.8 million Americans have been unemployed for longer than 6 months. Millions more remain underemployed or have simply dropped out of the workforce altogether, too discouraged to even look for work in this stagnant economy. Over that same period, a Democrat-led Senate and the Obama White House have done little but grow the size of the government and shrink the size of the middle class. In 2009, Congress passed a $1 trillion stimulus bill that poured taxpayer dollars into projects like Solyndra and a battery manufacturer that is now owned by the Chinese. It failed to create the jobs and economic growth that was promised by the White House, but it succeeded in creating 5 straight years of record deficits. In 2010, Congress enacted ObamaCare, essentially a government takeover of 1/6 of our economy with 2,700 pages of new laws and 25,000 pages of new regulations. It didn't fulfill the President's promise of lowering health care costs or letting families keep their doctors, but it has succeeded in canceling health plans and raising taxes. Also in 2010, Congress enacted Dodd-Frank. It hasn't fixed too big to fail, but in one respect, it has succeeded in creating jobs. It is estimated that there are more than 30,000 employees that will be required to file the paperwork associated with the $18 billion in Dodd-Frank compliance costs on our financial sector. Meanwhile, Congress has failed to put a check on the EPA, which continues pushing regulations that have record-setting price tags. These regulations aren't creating jobs, but they are fulfilling the President's promise to make energy prices skyrocket. 5 years into the Obama administration, the scorecard doesn't look very good. $456 billion in new regulations, $1.7 trillion in new taxes, 10.4 million people unemployed, and economic growth far behind the pace of other post-World War II recoveries. And so here we are, Mr. President, debating the 13th extension of unemployment, emergency unemployment benefits in the past 5 years, because we've got 3.8 million people in this country, workers who've been out of work for more than 6 months. If enacted, these benefits would last until June. Then what? Are we going to have a 14th extension, a 15th perhaps extension? Without job-creating policies, this 13th extension is just another Band-Aid that doesn't address the true causes of chronic joblessness that plagues the Obama economy. Mr. President, my Republican colleagues and I came to the floor yet again this week to debate and vote again, or to vote, I should say, on amendment ideas that will change the course that the Obama administration has put the country on. We've offered dozens of amendments that will stimulate private sector investment, create jobs, and make energy and health care more affordable. Mr. President, I've worked with many of my colleagues on a package of job-creating ideas that we would like to add to this 13th extension of emergency unemployment insurance benefits. My amendment, as I said, is called the Good Jobs, Good Wages, Good Hours Act, and it includes many of these ideas, and I'd like to just share a few of them with my colleagues here in the Senate, just so that people understand that when we come down here and talk about offering amendments and getting votes on amendments, we're serious. We have real substantive ideas that we believe will address the fundamental issue, the underlying cause of chronic high unemployment, by getting people back to work through job creation, through an expanding and growing economy. My amendment includes a provision that's been pushed by Senator Hoeven that would finally approve the Keystone XL pipeline, After 5 years of delay, it's time to approve the pipeline and the 40,000 jobs that it will support. Senator Hoeven's been the leading advocate of that here in the United States Senate. This amendment that I'm offering includes Leader McConnell's legislation to stop EPA's war on affordable energy. Leader McConnell's bill puts consumers ahead of liberal environmental groups by stopping costly regulations that will make it even more difficult for the middle class to make ends meet. My amendment includes a provision pushed by Senators Barrasso and Hoeven to approve more LNG exports to our NATO allies and to the Ukraine, something that's especially timely in light of what's going on in that part of the world. Now is the ideal time to create more domestic jobs while breaking our allies' dependence on Russian energy supplies. My amendment also addresses the problems created by Obamacare. It includes a provision pushed by Senator Collins that will restore the 40-hour work week. It will finally repeal the job-destroying medical device tax, which Senators Toomey and Hatch have been tirelessly fighting, and which has cost us, by some estimates, 30,000 jobs already in our economy because of this new job-killing tax. My amendment ensures that veterans and the long-term unemployed are not punished by the costs of the Obamacare employer mandate. It includes a provision that Senator Blunt has authored that raised this issue in the Senate on behalf of veterans. And in the House, a similar bill is passed by a vote of 406 to 1. Certainly we can find a few Democrats who are willing to provide Obamacare relief to veterans and the long-term unemployed. Mr. President, my amendment also provides permanent targeted tax relief to millions of small businesses. Small businesses create 65% of all new jobs, yet this administration has done little more than punish them with more regulations and higher taxes. This amendment makes permanent higher expensing levels, provides capital gains tax relief for investing in small businesses, and expands options to increase cash flow at Main Street businesses across the country. It allows small businesses to deduct more startup costs and puts the self-employed on an equal playing field when paying for health care costs. Mr. President, this amendment also includes common sense regulatory reform put forward by Senator Portman that will ensure taxpayers know the true cost of new regulations. It requires agencies to conduct a cost-benefit analysis and provide advance notice of any major new regulations. And finally, Mr. President, this amendment includes the House-passed Skills Act, which Senator Scott has introduced as an amendment to the UI bill. Currently, we have 50 federal worker training programs spread across 9 federal agencies. Many of them are duplicative, and few of them have been evaluated for whether or not they're effective. This amendment would combine 35 of those programs into one workforce investment fund that will empower governors to tailor programs to their states and benefit employers and employees alike. Mr. President, my point simply is that Senate Republicans stand ready to offer more than just the status quo. We understand that the long-term unemployed want more than just 20 more weeks of unemployment benefits. They want a job. We understand that those who are struggling to adapt in a changing economy want more than a morass of broken worker training programs. They want relevant training that prepares them for the jobs that are in demand today. We understand that low-income families want more than government programs designed to help them just get by. They want more opportunity and a better future for their children. And we understand that Main Street businesses across the country cannot afford endless regulations coming from Washington, D.C. They want a chance to succeed and to fulfill their American dream. So, Mr. President, I'm hopeful that at least some of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle understand that basic principle too, and will join us in including job-creating measures as part of this 13th extension of emergency unemployment benefits. We can do better for the American people. We should do better by the American people. We have serious proposals, serious job-creating proposals that don't get a chance to see the light of day because the majority party here in the United States Senate blocks amendments from being offered, blocks amendments from being debated, and blocks amendments from being voted on. And so what do we have? We have the status quo. which means that for the 13th time, we have to extend unemployment insurance benefits to people in this country who've been unemployed for way too long because we have failed to put policies in place that are actually good for job creation, that are actually the right types of incentives for our small businesses to hire, that take away the burdensome cost of taxes and regulations that make it more expensive and more difficult for our small businesses to hire. And because we fail to take into consideration the impact that so many of these things that we do here in Washington have on hardworking people in this country who are trying to lift their families into the middle class and to provide a better future for their children and grandchildren. That's what every American wants. That's what every family in this country aspires to. We ought to do something about it. And another meager government check that helps people get by isn't the way to a brighter and a better future. The way to a brighter and better future is a good paying job with an opportunity for advancement. That's what we ought to be focused on. And that's what the amendments that I just mentioned, or the provisions that I just mentioned that are included in my amendment, that incorporate many of the ideas that members on our side have advanced, all with an eye toward creating jobs and growing and expanding the economy in a way that will create those good paying opportunities and give people a better chance at a better future. Mr. President, I just really hope that we'll get the chance to vote on this. We can't get, evidently, individual amendments that have been offered by individual members voted on. So we've taken a number of those ideas and incorporated them into this one amendment, an alternative to what's being proposed by the Democrats, which simply treats the symptom of this problem, but does nothing to address the underlying cause of the problem. We want to focus on the problem. We want to focus on the cause. We want to focus on solutions. And we believe that the United States Senate ought to be the place where we have an opportunity to vote on those very solutions. So I encourage my colleagues on both sides, let's open this process up. Let's allow the American people to have their voices heard, not just the voices of a few, but the voices of the many people here in the United States Senate who have good ideas about how to create jobs, grow the economy, and build a better future for our children and grandchildren. Mr. President, I yield the floor.